This is Mark and Charity Mornings.
Mark and Charity Morning Coffee Podcast for this Remembrance Day, Thursday, November the 11th.
Remembrance Day.
Out of Belleville, Ontario, Canada. Thanks very much for spending about 15 minutes with us. A look behind the scenes on our radio show, various things going on in our community, a little bit more time we can spend than we can spend on the air.
Because we just like each other.
Because we do. And for a while, throughout the pandemic, Charity worked broadcast from her home. I am extremely thankful that did not continue afterwards.
You and me both.
Yeah.
As much as we were, and I've said this before, very fortunate to be able to do that.
Correct.
During that time.
Correct.
Because, of course, with my kids, too, it allowed me to remain home with them. But, yes, I was very happy to return to work.
Study came out this morning, though, that says 60% of businesses are going to respect their workers' requests to perhaps be more flexible, and why they're going to do that. We'll talk about that later on in the podcast.
It's not new. Certain areas around the world are already doing it.
Yeah, but Canadians embracing it by some pretty big numbers. So we'll talk about that coming up. But once again, the honor where it is due as we commemorate Remembrance Day today. And Remembrance Day 2021, far more like 2019.
It's getting back. It's getting closer.
Yeah.
Certainly. We mentioned yesterday the poppy celebrating a pretty big milestone. 100 years it's been this symbol. And many, of course, wearing it proudly today. You should have it on and make note of that. But yes, they'll be wearing it to ceremony. They'll actually be able to return to cenotaphs locally in their community. Many of them. Some still not holding any sort of ceremony, but a lot more this year than last year.
Did you see as many poppy boxes out this year?
You know what? I didn't, even though they were out there.
It's floating around the radio station between the end of our program and then when I can get busy again. Imagine that, walking around wasting other people's time. So that's what I do. And they saw the poppy on me, and she made the comment. She said, I don't know where my other poppy is. She says, I was only able to get one because she couldn't find them. And for me, it's the same thing. It's like, not I decide out of mind by any means, but, there's another one. I've got some change. I'll get another one because I like to give them the change. But if the boxes aren't there, you don't have as many opportunities to collect the money and get poppies. And she made the point is it's just not as prevalent this year, at least to her.
No. And I would agree with that because we mentioned a week ago that it had kicked off. It's the last Friday of October that they start the poppy campaign. I guess almost 2 weeks now. And we talked about the fact that they were going to be out, that they were happy to be back out. Volunteers were going to be out to keep an eye out for them. But I haven't seen them like I usually would. So it's tougher to grab one. I've had to be very careful with the ones I have.
Yep.
I've only lost one. But with my purse and my seatbelt strap, we mentioned that too. It's very easy. Even just sitting here, I noticed this morning it was starting to droop a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, there it goes.
Got my Belleville Senator sweater on. So I pin it through the logo because it's tighter stitched and then it won't slip off.
Well, and a neat little trick too that you might want to hang on to, the back of an earring.
Yeah,
Pop
so
that on,
good.
And that'll hold it in place as well.
So
I unfortunately did not do that this morning, but I should have. And it will hold it in place. But marking a huge milestone. And I wanted to bring to your attention too, Mark, because we talked about different colored poppies yesterday.
Yes.
That is not just solely red. And we posted Barbara Jo Klutz, blue Himalayan
blue.
Himalayan
Just
blue poppy.
Gorgeous.
So after posting the Himalayan blue poppy, Betty then posted all of these. And she didn't include a name, but look at that one is white with almost a violet center, white with red around the rim, and then this gorgeous pink one. I don't know, can you see that?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So who knew? I had no idea. I love the red and just kept the red, but there's so many different shades of it. So that was kind of neat.
My family has been commemorating Remembrance Day forever. My father was a veteran of the Second World War. He's the youngest of 6 brothers, 5 who served. And so my grandmother, and I looked it up, is a Silver Cross mother. I called it a war mother, but it's a Silver Cross mother for one of the years in Windsor.
Because one is honored every year, correct? As part of their ceremony.
There's one in Canada,
Yes.
but she was a Silver Cross mother one year in Windsor because she had 5 sons serving, of which 4 came back. And I always had an affinity for Uncle Joe, who would have died in Ortona.
How old was he?
He was my dad's older brother, young 30s. I think he was 32.
Wow.
So he died in Ortona December 19th, 1943.
Okay.
And is buried at the Canadian National Cemetery in Ortona, Italy. And when my dad went over and visited it just a few years before his death, so he would have been in his late 80s. And that's not an easy journey from Rome to Ortona, up over mountains.
Ooh.
I had to think about it, at his age, at any age, I guess. I mean, he didn't walk, but you know the point. It's not exactly the 401.
No.
When you're going over mountains.
Rough terrain.
In a 3,000-year-old country. Infrastructure isn't always the most important feature. He met a family and a young man there when Dad told the story, and he said he promised that he would, on November the 11th every year, come by and tend to the grave on his behalf. So
made that promise to him when he visited. Wow.
My dad died in 2014. So I'll assume that he went 15 years ago.
Prior
maybe
to that?
Like 2006, he might have gone.
Oh, okay.
So that young man now would be in his mid-30s. And I pray he's still going. But even if he did it once, what a wonderful gesture for my father that my Uncle Joe's remembered. But it's just funny how I have an affinity for him because I never met him. I was never really close with the other 4 either because my father's the youngest of an old family, and I'm the youngest of my father. So my uncles would have been older than your grandfather.
You'd be closer to your nephews, your nieces and nephews.
Yeah, but they all lived in Western Canada, so I don't think I even have facial recognition of what my Uncle Martin looked like.
Or not nieces and nephews, your cousins.
Yeah, I have very little, but it's funny. I just remember something my dad said because Joe and my Uncle Earl, his brother, were extremely close. Thick as thieves, Dad would say. The naughty boys, right? Thick as thieves. After the war, he said the war took 2 of my brothers. Earl was never the same for the rest of his life. A, because of the experience of war, but B, losing his brother.
Absolutely.
It was like a twin to him.
Oh,
I
my
think he was the
goodness.
next brother. So
You can't-
devastating.
You try, and yes, you hear these stories and
Yeah.
you watch the movies and you read the articles, but to actually have a sense of it, it's very hard to comprehend. As I mentioned earlier this week, Saving Private Ryan, you talk about families. It's all about a family
right.
that loses the same members of that family or members of the same family. And it was on, and my kids were in the room, and yes, it's very violent, and there's scenes in there that just knock you over.
First 20 minutes is almost unwatchable.
Exactly. And you think, okay, is this appropriate? But at the same time, I'm sitting there and I think, no, you guys need to watch this. You need to, because you try to convey that to them, that it's horrible. War is horrible. And I just pray and I hope you never have to experience it firsthand. And you try to explain it to them. You know what? Your dad would probably be there. People would be fighting. In 10 years, you would be of age to go yourself and be. It breaks your heart, and it's gut wrenching when you think about it.
We had a listener this morning who served and was remembering a fallen comrade from 2009. And if you could have heard his voice, you hear it in him.
Oh,
you hear the tremor in the voice. Like it is everything that Remembrance Day should be. Nobody celebrates Remembrance Day. We commemorate.
And I saw that. If you say Happy Remembrance Day, you don't get it. You clearly don't understand what today is.
A peaceful, a serene, a reflective Remembrance
As you said, it's
Day.
not a day to celebrate. It's a day to honor and reflect and remember.
Yeah. And then, so thank you very much for your Throwback Thursday today. Brothers in Arms didn't make it from Dire Straits. True's Highway of Heroes. And we'll play it twice if you're listening to this after our Remembrance Day ceremony at 11 o'clock. If you're listening outside of Canada, we commemorate it at 11 o'clock. And perhaps many other countries do around the world. We do it here in Canada at 11 o'clock with a minute, sometimes 2 minutes of silence. And we do it here on the radio, which is awkward for some people to have a radio go silent.
And it's really jarring, too, when you hear... You're taught no dead air. You always have to fill the air. So a full minute of silence really hits home.
And we wanted to, so if you're listening to us at work, but if you're hearing it after, we would have played Highway of Heroes again. And if you're unaware, if you're listening outside of Canada, let me tell you about the Highway of Heroes. CFB Trenton is where the repatriation of our fallen heroes first arrived on Canadian soil.
This is where
at
they
CFB
come home.
Trenton. It is about 30 kilometers from where we're broadcasting, about 18 miles from where we broadcast. And then they are taken to Toronto, down the 401, which had been dubbed after, throughout the Afghanistan war, the Highway of Heroes. It was so dubbed. The Trues, a Canadian trio, soft rock, acoustic rock band of Canada, wrote a song called Highway of Heroes. And they performed it here in Belleville.
In September.
Yeah, not that long ago.
That's part of their
so we played.
weekend.
And because of the Highway of Heroes beginnings here in Trenton, Belleville area, we have quite an affinity to the song. And I encourage you, wherever you're listening around the world, YouTube exists for a reason. Bring it up. Listen to the song.
It's an amazing
song. This is what
song.
it means to Canadians, and this is what it means to our area because of that song. And so that was a natural this morning. Brought to you by Burger Revolution. We appreciate it. We're going to be raising some money for the Royal Canadian Legion branch in Trenton with My Burger, Charity Great, the Enrichment Center for Mental Health here in Belleville with hers. But thank you for your votes on that. And thanks for picking that song because that's great. That was great.
Well, even listening to it, it always, and we said this yesterday, listening to it, Dire Straits does it to you. It's like a gut punch when you hear it. And the True's Highway of Heroes, doesn't matter where I am or what we're doing, even today, listening to it here in the studio, started to get choked up.
Yeah.
It's just one of those songs, it gives you the chills. If you don't have a reaction to it, then clearly you're not really listening to it.
Yeah.
It just grabbed you.
So a very serene Remembrance Day for you. I know a number of people get today off. If you have today off, not everybody does. And if you are working, are you still working from home throughout the pandemic? A survey came out this morning that 60% of Canadian businesses think that 9 to 5 is hooey.
I think that became more clear. And yes, became more clear during the pandemic.
How about Monday to Friday? Hooey.
5 days.
It's
Do we
amazing.
need 5 days, really?
Yeah. Whole thing has gone out the window.
Yep.
So of this survey, half of senior managers in Canada, half of them said that they encourage their workers to choose when they work. It's okay. You tell us when you want to work and get the work done. 31% of those that responded said they don't mind if their employees work fewer than 40 hours a week.
If the work's getting done. Again.
If the work is getting done and it's of high quality work because they enjoy where and what they're doing, why wouldn't I want that for my business? So the idea of punching the clock, driving to one location, having that inter-office meeting stuff, if that turns out was getting in the way of good productivity, why would we want it back after the pandemic? So they seem to be moving out. According to the survey, you are most likely to enjoy job flexibility as an employee if you work in a big company. Big companies have over 1,000 employees.
Okay.
I wouldn't have thought that. I thought that would be more difficult to organize.
But they're saying it's easier?
They're saying it's easier. And if you work remotely already. So if you're used to already working remotely, but you have to check in at 9 and let them know you're done at 5. No, you're already halfway. You're already 80% of the way there to total flexibility in your work if you work for some of those businesses. Things are a bit different on the worker side, though. According to employees who responded to the survey, 60% said, you know what, I need at least 8 hours a day to get my work done anyway.
Okay. So for some, they need that.
Right. You're offered the flexibility.
Yes.
Thanks, but I really need that 8 hours.
Yes.
And modern work also taking the toll. Over half of respondents say there are more video calls now than there were 6 months ago. So it's easier for me to go into the office instead of enduring the Zoom meetings.
Oh, yes.
So I know it sounds great. I'm at home in my jammies.
Yep.
But with all of the email responding and Zoom calls because I'm not in the office, I'm not interacting in these meetings, it's actually more work in the long run.
Well, and I was going to make that point too. As great as it was to have the flexibility, and that I think that's key, having the ability, knowing that it's there, the flexibility is available to work from home, I think is key too. Exactly. If it's bad weather, if someone's sick, if you're, especially now because you get the sniffles, you got to stay home anyway. To have that ability, a bonus. And that in itself is great because I was one of the ones that could not wait to get back here. This needs to be done in person.
Yeah.
And the Zoom meetings and everything are great to stay in touch. but it has its own hiccups and own trials and stresses. So I agree with that. I think it's more the case of if you allow your workers the ability to choose, and yes, that flexibility to decide, okay, you know what, today I do need to work in the office just because I need this, this, and this, and this done. But tomorrow, yeah, I'll work from home and I'll get it done and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that employees have that ability and are choosing that, and employers are giving them the opportunity to do that, because a happy employee will work harder for you and get the work done.
And a healthier one. So I'm not afraid to make a 10 o'clock doctor's appointment. I'll work from noon until 7 o'clock at night. Hey,
exactly. I will work past 5.
Sure.
If I have an appointment at 1, I'll go to that, and then I can work from home remotely and get it done and make sure it's done.
As opposed to not getting a doctor's appointment, which might be the case, because I'm a guy. I always think in terms of, I don't need a doctor's appointment. I think I feel healthy. Now that's not the case.
And I do believe, I think it was Sweden that has that already. They've already implemented that because it started before the pandemic, but the pandemic really brought it home, that, you know, giving people that option or letting them choose their own hours and to have the flexibility really does pay off in the long run. And
greater
so
productivity.
They've embraced it.
So appreciate that, everybody. Tomorrow on the podcast, it's Ask Me Anything. It's the AMA. So if you've got any questions you want to know about charity.
Oh, I got a good
one. Not about me, but really? We already have some. Text it in. You can text us from wherever you are in the world. Here it is, 613-962-0955. And we'll include it in our podcast tomorrow.
For example.
Oh.
What's your favorite thing about me?
Oh.
Yeah. That's one of the questions. What's your favorite thing about each other?
Oh, see.
So.
Just one?
Good answer.
Saved it there.
Good answer.
Could have gotten awkward. Didn't happen. I'm a professional.
But send us your questions. What do you want to know? And yes, we'll answer them tomorrow.
Appreciate it. It's the Mark and Charity Coffee Podcast, about 15 minutes out of your day, this solemn Remembrance Day. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. If you listen to us on Spotify, that little heart at the top, click it. You'll get a notification every day when we are live on Spotify, also Apple Podcasts, and here on our social media sites out of Belleville, Ontario, Canada. It is Thursday, November the 11th, a Remembrance Day with Mark and Charity.